Good morning to all my fabulous grade 5s out there. A quick shout out to Keziah. I know you're watching. Lovely to have you with us this morning. Let's jump across into our maths. As ever, just a reminder, if you have any questions, you want to send me something, grade 5 at WorksheetCloud.com. And after the lesson, just click on the link above just to make sure that you've grasped the concepts that we have done today. The next sheet, as usual, is the mental arithmetic for the day. 10 problems for you to practice, things you should be able to do in your head. They're 10. I'll give you 40 seconds to answer it. Please make sure you've got pencil and paper. Otherwise, how will you answer it? You don't need to write down the question, just the answer. It's a little different today. I've used division in today's one, but this time sometimes you'll be asked to find the answer and sometimes you'll be asked to find one of the numbers that goes into it. So if I gave you an example with plus, I might say 6 plus 7 equals, and you'd have to work out what the answer is. Or I might say 5 plus something equals 10, and you'd have to work out what the missing number was. Or I could say something plus 4 is equal to 10, and you'd have to work out what the other something was. So it could be any one of the three. So it could be what the answer, it could be either of the two numbers that go into it. Okay, I hope that makes sense. It should make sense once you see it. So I'll give you 40 seconds, and your time starts now. Halfway done. And stop. I think that you would have probably found this was quite a lot harder than the other mental arithmetic ones we've done in the morning. Don't let that stress you out. Division is normally the one that's more difficult. So first of all, you would have found it harder because it's the most difficult of the operations. And secondly, I've thrown a spanner in the works and I've given you a problem where sometimes you're working out the answer and sometimes you're working out the question. So really, this is one of those things that takes practice. If your mind can work through these sorts of problems, that's really useful. But don't worry if you didn't get it all today. I think the more we practice this kind of problem, the easier it'll get. So let's go through it. 36 divided by 4. Another way of asking that is how many 4s in 36? The answer is 9. Just give yourself a tick if it's right. Just put the answer next to what you wrote if it's wrong. 42 divided by something gives me 6. I can also ask how many 6s in 42, and it's 7. So the missing number is 7. To find number 3, I've got to work backwards. So something divided by 10 gives me 6. So if I actually multiplied the 6 by 10, I would find out what this number was, which was 60. So I'm doing the reverse operation. I'm taking my answer, timesing it by 10, and then I get 60. So 3 was 60. 45 divided by 9 is 5. So how many 9s go into 45? It's 5. So the answer is 5. For question 5, 25 divided by something gives me 5. The answer is 5. So 5 fits into 25 5 times. Over here, it's the same as this number 3. We're going to work backwards. So the opposite of division is times. 7 times 3 is 21. So 21 divided by 3 is 7. So the answer for 6 is 21. This one should have been quite easy. 40 divided by 10, 4. I'll come back to a little trick with that a little bit further into our lesson. 56 divided by something gives me 8. 56 divided by 7. So I counted in 8s until I got to 56 and I found it was 7. Something divided by 2 gives me 2. 4 divided by 2 gives me 2. Again, this is like 6 and 3. We did the reverse, so 2 times 2 gives me 4. And so the answer for number 9 was 4. And this one is a bit like number 7. 30 divided by 10 gives me 3. We'll go through the tricks for that shortly. Okay, so don't worry if you didn't do so well with this. This is the kind that takes the most practice and often the last one of the operations for us to feel really comfortable with. When I say operations, I'm talking about plus, minus, times, and divide. Those are the 4 basic operations. So we've looked at the other 3 operations. We've looked at plus or addition, we've looked at subtraction, we've looked at multiplication, and so we go on to division. There are many ways of doing division. We're going to focus on short division, and short division, not long division. There is such a thing as long division, but we don't cover that in grade 5. I know some of your teachers will start. I've done it with grade 5s in the past, but I find that really by grade 6, they're feeling a little bit more comfortable with it. So I'm just going to do short division today. So goals for today, know that there are different ways to divide. Like with the other operations, you can do it different ways, but we're just going to focus on one. Have an idea when to use short division, when to use a trick with 0, which I'll show you, and when we use long division, which we aren't going to do, but it's good to know when we would use it. And then finally to be able to do short division. I'm not entirely sure why I put a pirate there, but seeing as there is a pirate there, I'm going to tell a pirate joke. Where do you go to school to learn to be a pirate? You don't go to school. You just are. Okay, that was terrible. Okay, short division. The key to being able to do short division is knowing our times tables. So if your times tables are good, short division is going to be easy. If your times tables are weak, it's going to take long. And the quicker you take that time and put that effort into getting your times tables right, the easier it's going to get. So first off, we use short division when the divisor, which is the number we are dividing by, or when that is less than 10. When it is 10, we're going to use a trick, which I'll show you. And when it's bigger than 10, so 15, 20, 35, we would use long division. Generally, it's when you're not so comfortable with the times table that you're using. Over to our whiteboard. I'm going to start with that division trick. So what if we had something like our question from, I think that was it. No, sorry, it was divided by 10. So we've got a situation where we've got a naught in both the divisor, the number we're dividing by, and in the number we're dividing, this number here. So we've got 2 zeros there. And what we can actually do then is we can ignore the zeros. So as long as the number of zeros is the same, 1 over here, we can pretend they're not there. And we can say 4 divided by 1 is 4. And so 40 divided by 10 is also 4. So that's a little trick that we can use over there. I'm going to do another one. So if we had something like 160 divided by 10, we can ignore those. And we can say, well, 16 divided by 1 is 16. There's our answer. It also works with numbers like this. Let's say I had 160 divided by 20. So I still have a 0 and a 0. So I can cross them out. I can ignore them. And then I say 16 divided by 2. How many 2's in 16? 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, 14, 16. So it's 8. And then my answer to the whole problem is 8. Yeah, so likewise. And it also works with bigger numbers. So if I had 2,100 divided by 700, I can say, well, I got 2 zeros there and 2 zeros there. I can ignore them. Remember, it has to be the same number in both. And then I can say 21 divided by 7 is 3. And so the answer to 2,100 divided by 700 is 3. So that's a really neat little trick if the number you're dividing with has zeros and the number that you're also dividing has zeros as well. Now, I don't think many of you will have touched on decimal fractions yet, but for those of you that have, this trick actually extends to numbers that don't have zeros in the dividing number. So let's say I had 29 and I was dividing that by 10. Please, if you haven't done decimals, don't worry about this. It will be easier once you've done decimals. It will make sense once you've done decimals. This is just a sort of like a little BT dubs for those people who have touched on decimals. So if we imagine that what we're doing here, so imagine the comma for the decimal would be there. We don't normally put it if we've got nothing after it. So it's like a ghost 0. When we divide by 10, we shift that comma one space to the left. All right, so your answer then would be 2,9. And likewise, what we were really doing when we said 2100 divided by, let's say 100, ghost 0. And we said, well, we have 2 zeros, so we're going to shift our comma 2 places to the left. And the answer then is 21, 0. And because the comma 0 doesn't mean anything, we leave it off. And so the answer would be 21. And if you were doing it the way I was showing above, 2100 divided by 100, cross off the zeros because we've got the same number for each. 21 divided by 1 equals 21. So if you are using decimals, then this is a really neat way to just move. So you don't need to worry that you've got both ones with zeros in the question and in the answer, as in I had over here. It does work for all questions as well. Anyway, don't let that confuse you. The key point was what I was showing you up here. So let's move on to short division. I'm not even going to show you long division because it's quite a slow process. And one that we learn because it teaches our brain to think in a certain way. Because the truth is, as I've told my classes in the past, there's very few times when you'll actually need long division. 1, if you have children who are doing it at school and you need to teach them. Or 2, if like me, you become a teacher and then you need to teach children how to do long division. But in real life, you could pretty much use a calculator. So the real reason we do it is to teach your brain to think in a certain way. Okay, let's go on to short division. And the best way to do it is by looking at some examples. So I'm going to say 6842 divided by 2. And we're going to set this one out like this. So the divisor, the number we're dividing by, goes on the outside. I don't know why some children I've taught have chosen to call this line that we draw here a bus stop. So if you want to call it a bus stop, that's fine. And we put the number we're dividing underneath there. And now we're ready to start. So what we're going to do is we're going to take each one of these numbers underneath the bus stop and we're going to look at them one at a time. So if I look at the 6 first, I'm asking how many times does 2 go into 6? 2, 4, 6. It goes in 3. And I put that 3 above the top, or above the bus stop, on top of the bus stop. Then I'm going to ask, how many times does 2 go into 8? 2, 4, 6, 8. 4 times. And that number goes on top of the bus stop. Next, I'm going to ask, how many times does 2 go into 4? 2, 4, twice. So that number goes on top of the bus stop. And finally, I'm going to ask, how many times does 2 go into 2? And the answer is once. And that goes on top of the bus stop. And so my answer to 6,842 divided by 2 is 3,421. Pretty straightforward. Now, obviously, not obviously, but as I normally do, I start with the easier ones, and I'm going to work towards the more complicated ones. And so that was a very easy one. And the next one will have a slightly more complicated thing. But it's, again, not super complicated. So let's write it out. So we've got 489 divided by 3. If you remember your divisibility rules, which I hope you do, I can tell that this will go in exactly because 9 plus 8 plus 4 gives me 21 and 3 goes into 21. So I know that this is going to fit exactly. Doesn't matter, but I'm just reminding you of those other rules we've learned. Okay, let's set it out properly with the bus stop. 489. Step 1. How many times does 3 go into 4? Well, 3 fits in once. 6 too many, so 3 fits in once. But this time, unlike above, it didn't fit in exactly. It did fit in, but there was something left over. And we can't just ignore that something. So what we're going to do is we're going to give that something, our leftovers, to our neighbor. All right, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to give that leftover there. So where did I get my leftover? I said, well, 3 went into 4 once. So I've used up 3 of the 4 and I have 1 left over. And that's the one that I'm giving to the neighbor. Next step, I'm going to ask, how many times does 3 go into this? But this is no longer an 8, it's 18. All right, so this is now considered 18 because we've got the 1 that we got from our neighbor. So 3 goes into 18, 3, 6, 9, 12, 15, 18, 6 times. So the 6 goes up top. And I used them all up, so there was nothing left over, which means that I now go on to looking at my neighbor afterwards and ask how many times does 3 go into 9? 3, 6, 9. 3 times, nothing left over, and that's my answer, 163. So 489 divided by 3 is 163. I'm going to give you one more worked example, and then I'm going to give you one that I'd like you to work out yourselves. So let me go with 3, oops, it's a bit high, 3, 8, 2, 4, divided by 4. So step 1 is to lay things out as they're going to be. Drawing your bus stop, 3, 8, 2, 4. And first I'm going to ask, how many times does 4 fit into 3? None, it doesn't. If I've got 4 people and they walk into a room with 3 chairs, they don't all get to sit down. So the answer is 0. Okay, I'm going to come back to putting a 0 there at the end of the question, but let's just put a 0. But now we still have 3 left over. So we're going to give those to the neighbor. 3 over there. Next question, we're going to ask, how many times does 4 go into 38? 4, 8, 12, 16, 20, 24, 28, 32, 36, 40 would be too much, so we've got 9. So it fits in there 9 times. So 9 was 36, and we had 38, so 37, 38, we've got 2 left to give to our neighbor. All right, so let's just go through that again. We had 38, we asked how many times does 4 go into 38, and we got that it fitted 9 times, and 9 times 4 was 36. So we used 36 of the 38, which means we've got 32 left, and that's what goes to our neighbor. Oopsie. And now we ask how many 4s go into 22. 2, 4, 6, 8, 10. Oh, sorry, 4s. 4, 8, 12, 16, 20. 24 would be too much, so it's just 5. And 4 times 5 was 20. We had 22 and we've used 20, so that's 21, 22. There's 2 left, and that's what goes to our neighbor. And lastly, we're going to ask how many 4s in 24. 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12. Again, counting in 2s. 4, 8, 12, 16, 20, 24. 24, it fits in exactly 6 times. And there's our answer. So we've got 0,956. And that's what I was going to say. When we've got a 0 at the front, we actually just put a dot because you won't read that in the number. So the answer to 3,824 divided by 4 is 956. Right, number 4, on your own. I will give you 40 seconds to get this one done. I've chosen an easier times table, one with 5 in it. So if you know your divisibility rules, you'll be able to tell immediately that that's going to be divisible. Right, get going with that one. You've got about another 35 seconds. I'll just lay it out in the meantime. Okay, I think that's enough time. If you'd like more, just pause it. If your times tables are good, that should have been more than enough time. All right, so step one, we're asking how many times does 5 fit into 6? Well, let's ask if it does fit in. 5 fits into 6. Yes, so 5, 10 doesn't, so just the ones. So that one goes up top. We didn't use all of that 6. We had 1 left over, so we're giving the 1 to the neighbor. Next, we're asking how many times does 5 go into 15? 5, 10, 15. It goes in 3 times. No left over, nothing for the neighbor. How many times does 5 fit into 5? 5 goes in there once. So the answer to 655 divided by 5 is 131. Okay, now we've got a couple where we have a leftover, but we don't have any more neighbors. So let's do an example like that so that you can see what I mean, and then we will come back. So 6,713 divided by 6. Six goes into 6 once, nothing left over, nothing for the neighbor. 6 goes into 7 once, with 1 left over for the neighbor. 6 goes into 11, so 6, 12. It almost fits twice, but only once. Once, but lots left over. So we had 11 and we used 6. 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. We have another 5 left over. So we give 5 to the neighbor. Now we've got to ask how many times does 6 go into 53? Got to know your 6 times table. 6, 12, 18, 24, 30, 36, 42, 48, 54. Oh, 54 was too much, so it only goes in 8 times. So that 8's going to go up top. But we had some leftovers. So 48 was what we used. I'm just jotting it down there. There were 53. We've used 48. So 49, 50, 51, 52, 53. We have 5 left over. And we write there. Oh, let me write it out full before we start abbreviating. Remainder 5. So you've got 5 left over. And that's how you write it. When you get to grade 6, you'll learn how to write it as a fraction, or you might get to learn to write them as decimals, but I'm not going to touch on that right now. It just makes it a little bit too much to remember at once. Okay, I'm going to do one more with the with helping you and walking you through it. One of these ones where we're doing with a remainder. If you'd like to try this one on your own, then please pause the video. I'm going to go straight into it, and then I've got 2 that I'd like you to do without my help, and then I'll go through them afterwards. So this one, I'm going to do it sort of more of a slightly quicker speed, and you'll see that it actually works quite quickly. So 7 doesn't go into 3, goes in 0 times with 3 left over. 7 goes into 38. 5 times, which is 35, with 3 left over. 7 goes into 39 5 times with 4 left over. 7 goes into 41 5 times with 6 left over. We can shorten remainder to rem 6. So most teachers are happy with it. Some teachers are even happy if you just put R6, but I always like to just put remainder 6. Okay, so that's slightly quicker. Obviously, it helps that my times tables are quite good. I'm going to give you question 7 and question 8. No, question 7 and 8, and that's where we're going to stop. So I'd like you to try these ones on your own. As you can see, I'm working slowly up towards slightly more complicated times tables. You can start with that one so long. I'll move the screen up now. Right, I'll give it about another 30 seconds to do that one. No, I'll give it a little bit longer, but I'll set them out so long. Right, I'm going to do number 7 now, if you'd like some more time. And I really admire you if you're going to pause the video so you've got the time to finish it, because it's always good to battle through. That's how we learn, even if it's taking you a while with your times tables. So we first ask, does 8 go into 6? It's too big, so it doesn't. Incidentally, the mistake that most grade 5s make is they try and fit this into this. So say how many 6s in 8. That's the most common mistake. Remember, it's always the outside going in. So how many 8s go into 6? The answer is none, and because it's the front, we just put a 0, and we've got to carry that, give that 6 to the neighbor, give it to the neighbor. Now we're going to ask how many 8s in 66. 8, 16, 24, 32, 40, 48, 56, 64. That's as many as we can get, so it's 8. Where we used 64, there were 66, so there were 2 left over. How many 8s in 27? 8, 16, 24, so that's 3. We used 24 of the 27, so we've got 3 left. How many 8s in 37? 8, 16, 24, 32. That would be as many as we can, so it's 4. And we've used 32 of those 37, so 33, 34, 35, 36, 37, remainder 5. Okay, I'm running out of time, so let me move straight on to the next one. You can always pause it afterwards, or pause it now if you'd like some time to practice this one. 9 does not fit into 8, so we put a dot. We've got to give the 8 to the neighbor. 9 goes into 81. 9, 18, 27, 36, 45, 54, 63, 72, 81 goes in 9 times with nothing left over because it used all 81 of them. 9 into 9 goes once, nothing left over. 9 into 6 doesn't fit. We still have 6 left over, but there's no one to give it to, so remainder 6. Okay, that is short division. I am just going to share quickly with you some fancy vocabulary so you can impress your teachers. Always like being impressed as a teacher, and I'm sure your teachers do. The thing we're dividing by is called the divisor. The number that we're dividing is called the dividend. You notice they all have that sort of divvy part at the beginning. The answer to a division problem is called the quotient, which doesn't look anything like it should. Doesn't start with divvy or anything, but that is the answer to a division problem. So those are 3 words that you can learn if you really want to impress your teacher. You can say, yes, ma'am, that's the dividend, or yes, sir, that's the divisor. Or are you asking me what the quotient is? I'm sure they'll be very impressed. Anyway, that's all that we have for today. A reminder, any questions, email me, grade5@worksheetcloud.com. After the lesson, click on the link above just to practice some short division. I hope that it's not something that you're going to be bothered by in the future. Remember those words if you want to impress your teachers. I apologize for the terrible pirate joke, and I hope you have a lovely day, grade 5s. Goodbye.